Hey, happy knitting. Today's your lucky day. All right, so Dawn and I are going to show you step by step. Tonight we're going to work on casting on and knitting. And any questions you have, you'll be able to contact us. We're going to give you this video so you can watch it. And hopefully it will give you all the information that you need. Okay, so the first thing, Dawn, say hello.
Hello.
So I'm going to sit and Dawn's gonna do the video stuff, and we're gonna try and just walk you briefly without overwhelming you about the beginnings of knitting. So obviously the first thing you need is a pair of knitting needles. We don't use this type anymore. We use circulars, but
So much better.
so much better, but we're not gonna confuse you tonight. All right. Wear this as a necklace until it comes time to use them. All right, so you are going to go buy, if you haven't already, and it would be preferable if you got wooden. They're not as slippery, so you won't become as frustrated, and they're a little easier to use as a beginner. Okay, so this is just one brand. You can get plastic ones. They don't slide as much. You just want to stay away from metal. All right, do I look hideous as I'm talking here?
No.
All right, so these are size 8, and this is the other thing we want to talk to you about. When you buy yarn, your needles coincide with the weight of the yarn that you use. This one, size 8 needle, goes with and we'll give you a close-up of some information here. This is a 4. This is a worsted weight yarn. It gives you all the information that you need about the yarn. It gives you the yardage. It gives you the needles that you should be using. It gives you gauge, which we'll talk about down the road. Not to worry about it right now. So these size 8 needles work well with this yarn. I'm going to show you, and this is the yarn that we're talking about. You can see that it's a little thinner. And I'm going to show you a bulkier yarn and the information for that. All right, tell me if we need to pause. So this just shows you, did I mix this up? I can't see without my glasses. Is this a 4? Isn't this a 5? Leave it to me.
This is a 4. This is 5.
I mixed you up. Okay. This one goes with this one. and these needles. Number 4, worsted weight, size 8 needles. The bulkier, which you can see is puffier and thicker, is a 5 weight. Okay, tells you the yardage, same thing, gives you all the information, but you can see the difference between the two. You may not see it right here, but as you're working with it, this one is bulkier than this. The yardage may actually be less on this one, even though it looks bigger. That's down the road. It probably isn't making a lot of sense right now. The one thing that if you decide to go into a yarn shop, these you can get in your local craft store. This you can get in your local craft store. So what you're going to remember, the thing you want to look for is a 4 weight and a size 8 wooden needles. Okay, that's what we're going to get started on tonight. If you decide to go and look at yarn one of these days, you do not want to get something like this. This has to be wound either by hand or by a winder, which I didn't bring one in to show you, to make it look like this so you can actually work with it. So you want to stay away from this lovely little thing right now.
Eventually you'll be
Yeah,
a ton of those.
you'll eventually be like yarn sluts like us. Or we call ourselves yarn snobs
Yes.
as well, but I like slut.
Those yarns are pretty.
They're pretty, they feel different, it's wonderful. So we hope you get addicted just like we are. Okay, one more thing, knitting gauge. These are always good to have on the paperwork that Dawn sent to you. You actually have a picture of the same exact one. They come in plastic now. This just tells you your needle size. It also, if you're learning to do sweaters and stuff on down the road, you want to know that you're getting the exact measurements you're supposed to get. Something you're not worrying about right now. This is just a little handy dandy device that if you don't hold on to, I'm dropping everything. If you don't hold on to your bag that your needles come in.
Which you never do.
Yes, you never do. Let me get my
You'll
scissors.
need a gauge.
I'm dropping everything. So you need one of these. Let's get our needles out. So that you could say, oh, what needle is this? And you put it in. Oh, fits in there. Can't fit in there. So this is the last. So it tells you your needle size. So you keep one of these with you. Like I said, they're in, same thing, craft store. They are plastic now. They also do have the metal ones still. Okay? So go over one
Some
more time.
needles, just so you know, will say it on the needle. This
Oh,
one doesn't.
yeah.
A lot of them do
Here.
now.
So
They've
here's-
gotten better.
I don't know if you can see it. This is a circular. So it is on here. You kind of need a flashlight. And
5.5.
so that's the
US.
millimeters, but that's means it's a 9.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah. So
But I would recommend the gauge. I carry it everywhere. And you always
Yeah.
need it for the inches when you're doing hats or whatever.
Right.
It'll be 6 inches. 6 inches is a lot bigger than you think.
a lot bigger than All right, here we go. So I'm sitting at my little desk and sit where you're comfortable, be comfortable. Most times we used to tell everybody, sit back, keep your arms down at your side. You do whatever works for you. I'm using this yarn against these needles because it's darker and you'll be able to see it better. Dawn and I just talked about this. I'm going to use this yarn because it's easier to see against the needle. And what we're going to do, casting on, there's a little trick that for every 10 stitches, you take the yarn from your hand to your elbow, and that's generally 10 stitches. So if your project calls for 20 stitches, which your first project will more than likely be a scarf. So we're gonna measure that out 2 times, okay? If you have 70 stitches, you're gonna do 7, and so on and so forth, okay? So right now we're just gonna do 20, so it's 2 quick ones. We'll see if we actually come to it. The first thing you have to do is a slip knot. When you do a slip knot, you just make a circle, pull it through, and just put it on your needle and pull both pieces of yarn. I'm gonna do it again. You have a piece here that eventually ends, and you have the piece here that's attached to your yarn. Okay, so let's pop it out and try it again. Slip knot around your pointer finger, all the way around. Bring a loop through and just grab that loop with your needle and tighten both pieces. Okay?
That's good. I learned something new.
There
I
you
won't do
go.
it that way.
To me, that's about the easiest way. If you find your own way to do it, you find whatever way works for you. All right, so the cast on, the famous cast on. Like we said before, you have a length that's eventually going to end. You have a piece that's attached to your yarn. You take your pointer and your thumb, it's the letter L, and you turn it backwards. So before you do that, pointer goes to one side, thumb goes to the other. So let's see how we can show you this. So pointer, thumb. What you're gonna do is your 2 bottom fingers, grab your 2 pieces, and you bring this down. I know, everybody just fainted and we lost you. All right, so one more time. It's backward L, pointer here, thumb here. So before you grab these, just bring this in, then grab everything and it rests between your hand. Okay, to cast on, it's under, over, and down and through. Let go of it, your thumb tightens it. Bring it down again. Under, over, down and through. Take your thumb out. All of my other fingers are staying in place. Then I use my thumb to kick it back. Okay, we're back in place. Under, over, down and through. Thumb tightens it. You move your stitches down a little bit. The nice thing with the wooden needles is it holds it in place, because if you're using metal needles, these stitches are sliding up to where you are up here. So again, separate them. You can't just use one for this. You're only using one when you knit. when you're casting on, we need to use both. So this is always the position. You don't have to go all the way down here and start. You can get close to your needle, pull it down. Okay, my other two fingers are holding the two pieces together, and you're in place. Under, then by your pointer to the top, down. Only your thumb needs to tighten it, and you're back in place. So you can take your hands out to readjust because you'll be like this, and you just bring it back into place each and every time. Once you get used to it, you'll get more comfortable with it. It's a very awkward feeling in the very beginning. So your thumb underneath, on top of the pointer yarn, down to your thumb again. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, down again.
It's funny, it looks hard, but it's really not.
It's not. Once you start to get it, and I'm going to show you, it's a
quick.
smooth stroke. It
Yeah.
doesn't even look like I'm doing the up, over, and down. It looks like I'm almost skipping that last one because it just becomes very smooth. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
So
does.
that's
It looks harder than it is, but it's not. And don't go so tight on your needle. Don't
Yeah.
pull it because you're going to knit through those stitches.
right. That's a good point. So don't like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm making it because Dawn's right. Second row or the first row of
It's
knitting, you
terrible
have
to
to get
knit.
this other needle under those stitches. You don't want it super loose. The other thing, but you don't want it super tight. The other thing is this gives you a nice ridge where if you just, there's another cast on, which I'll show that real quick, that you just use one side. You just use the string. So we make a slip knot, and you use 2 needles for this. Make a slip knot. This is called a knitted cast on. Actually, I don't do it like that. I'm wrong.
You don't even know how to do the knit.
Yeah, you don't hardly need a tail
I
at
only
all.
ever use the other one.
Yeah.
Guys.
So, I mean, if you became frustrated, there is a knitted one, which you don't use this tail. You just start to knit. You do your knitting, and you pull this up and put it on. This is another cast on. It doesn't give you, just knit, pull it up, and put it on. It doesn't give you as nice of an edge as the other one does. And sometimes when you knit this, pull it up and put it on. Then you gotta grab the last one you did, knit it, pull it up, and put it on. I mean, it works. If you get frustrated, I'm gonna go back and do the other one again. And it's nice, but it's not quite like the other one. We can do this again, we'll practice those both again. Your other one that we showed you, the knitted cast on, or the cast on really that everybody does with one. And when I say everybody does it, it doesn't mean you have to do it. If you're getting frustrated and you are so frustrated by this, then do the other one.
Yeah, but learn this one.
Learn this one because the
It's
edges
better,
are nice.
It's easier, and once
It's
you get
quick.
it, it's easy.
Right.
Just practice it.
it's-
Take the time to practice it.
Yep. So you see that I'm moving smoothly, and the only thing I'm really doing is kicking it out with my thumb. Everything else stays in place. These stay holding, and this doesn't change. So the only thing that changes is my thumb moving and then coming back into place. All right. When you get too close to the top, shove them down a little bit. And continue on till you've reached your required number of stitches for your pattern.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's a cast on. All right, so as Miracles would have it, we used our little method and we cast on 20, which is what we were just talking about. And the tail is a fine length. You don't have to worry about this. If it's a little bit longer, it's going to be in your way. A lot of times if you leave it too long, you end up knitting it with it instead of with this. But this really isn't going to be in our way, or you're going to realize this isn't what you need. Okay? So this is your live yarn now. This is what you need right here.
When it is too long, though, it is easy to knit with. I cut mine at the beginning.
I did it the other day. So it happens. It happens all the time.
Cut it, knot it, do something.
Do something so you acknowledge that that's not the
You
one
don't
you're
want that.
using. So when we first start knitting, The best way, and maybe you have a different idea, Dawn, that you could say, when I knit, knitting is up. It's like an X to me. Okay, so I'll just knit and we'll talk about it. So your first stitch, and what you do have to watch with this first stitch, because it is loose, it has a tendency to come out a little bit. So you don't want it super, super tight, but do know that it will puff out a little bit or loosen up a little bit.
I
Loosen up.
tie a knot.
Oh, you do?
I knot that string.
Oh, okay. That's a
because
good idea.
I've gotten burned a few times.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So I knot it so
Okay.
I know it doesn't slide out on me.
That's a
especially
good
if
idea.
you're learning.
Okay, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. See, I learned something today. So you're knitting. Your first stitch, we're going to knit everything. This week is just knitting. We're going to just do casting on and knitting. So you go in, you hold, it's like an X. Remember just to take the long one, not the little one, and you bring the yarn through the middle. Now you see, so you made a good point, Dawn, that this loosened up on me already because I didn't do anything to it. So this is really,
Because you have to pull both. If
Yeah.
you don't knot it, you got to pull those at the beginning.
you got to pull and make that first one tight. All right, so let's knit, and it will be a little loose, that's okay. So we go in again, second stitch, through the middle, down and off. Up, yarn comes through the middle, down and off. And this is knitting. This is what you continue to do. Knitting, the yarn is always to the back, okay? You go in through the front. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay, down like a T, and then you take that stitch off. In the very beginning, but the wood needles will hold your stitches on. You don't want to get too close to the top because you see that it's much more narrow. It'll make your stitches super tight when you transfer them. So kind of stay a little bit down from the tip.
And it's easy to slide off the top if you're too high up.
Yep, that's true too. Okay, up.
And you're moving from left to right. That was my hardest thing. I could never
Good point.
figure out
That's
which
great.
way I was going,
Yep.
what I was doing, and I'd have to call Debbie and say, help me.
And you know what? It doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. It's just learn this way. There's not a right hand. There are people that do learn left-handed. No one can ever help you fix something unless they're a left-handed knitter. A lot of times they used to say unless they sat across from you because then they mirrored you. Just, it doesn't show right hand or left hand. Just learn to knit doing it the regular way. I
Right.
don't know if that makes sense, but okay, so I'm just going to go through this whole row.
And that's
Okay.
knitting. Once
That's
you know knitting and purling are the two basic stitches.
They are the two basic stitches that carry you through to everything. It's the other patterns when you get this and you're comfortable with this, all it is manipulation of these two stitches.
Yep.
You'll see knitting two together, slipping a knit. They're just manipulations to make the pattern. You need to, that's why I always sit and do it like this. Sit on a couch. You can use your leg as a brace or my fat gut if I'm here. Whatever works. Okay, so you can see that now. The other thing too, if you notice how bigger this has gotten. So when you cast on the first row, it looked like it was about this big. When you knit it, it almost doubles out.
Yeah.
So when you say, somebody will say like, oh, but you cast on 20 stitches and this is going to be a scarf. And you're like, wow, this is going to be the smallest scarf ever. It's really not, because these have increased in size. And so if you were doing a scarf with 20 stitches, most times you will be using more than 20. You can see how much larger it has become. And you would just, so then you turn it. Your right needle is always blank because you're transferring, right, from left to right.
It's always left to right.
Start the thing again. Now, the second row, once you hooked this, it becomes better.
Right.
The one thing you want to do is you want to get in here, not in here. A lot of times you do this at the end, and I'll show it to you when I get to the end, because that's how you end up with an increased amount of stitches. So if you cast on 20, And this also
Count.
got looser. So if you're doing a straight run and you're doing a project with 20 stitches and all you're doing is knitting, maybe like every 8 rows or something, just count your numbers every 5 rows, maybe in the beginning, maybe every row.
I'd say every row at the beginning.
Maybe
I used to
every
lose
row.
stitches all the time.
So, and you see, this has already loosened up, so it's much easier to slide. It's not, the first row is always a little tighter. I can move this down, and I just want to show you when we get to this last little stitch that always has like a loop to it. So the ends, so you have to, well, actually this didn't really do it. So this was fine. Sometimes people go into here or they think it's another stitch.
That's why I'd count.
Yeah.
Count
So-
your 20.
So this is where this is going to be problematic for people. So you're going to say, well, do I go into that and then that? No, you always turn it so that it's,
Pull your tail.
yeah. And maybe an easier way to remember is this, the work is always to the inside for now. Okay, so if it's facing this way, you're going to go in here and maybe here. That's not the way. Your seam is facing towards you or towards the middle. Okay, you're not going here, you're going right next to the needle.
Yep.
And you're just, this is knitting.
That's it.
This is it. This is it. So we're gonna, okay? So at least you have this as a reference. You can see that when I get comfortable, I kind of start to turn it so it maybe doesn't look like it's going up. It's still the same.
That's how I knit.
Yeah.
I kind of knit sideways.
Yeah, so it's, I'm almost holding it exactly sideways now and going up into it, where when we first started to show you it was like this. It's whatever your comfort becomes. Okay?
Yep. Just make sure you go front to back.
Yep, front to back, it's almost like an X. Make sure when you slide it, you come in, you slide it,
slip it off.
all the way off. And that's it. All right, so we're gonna call and keep practicing that, and that's it. You can use your thumb to keep your stitches in place so they don't slide, but the wooden needles are pretty good. They really don't, slide too much. You want to start out in the very beginning with a smooth yarn. You don't want to get one of those yarns that's real
Alpaca like.
bubbly, and yeah, you want to stick with something smooth because it's easy to see the stitches this way. You can see that they're very defined. When you get to those yarns that have texture to them and stuff, they're very difficult to work with and difficult to see. And this is it. So your whole pattern will look like this. Some stitches in the beginning will be super nice looking. Some stitches will be a little higher. Don't beat yourself up. Take the time, do your 20 stitches and maybe do 20 rows. Look at it. You can talk to us about it as well. Continuity is a good thing, but continuity is not going to be great in the beginning, and maybe it will be. Okay, so it's just about getting comfortable and getting the feel for it and enjoying it. You're becoming a yarn whore.
Yay!
All right, lesson number 1.